So it doesn't, oh, it does say it on the thing. Okay.
Just setting up. Alrighty, everyone, we are live. This is really exciting. This has been in the oven for quite a while now. Hello, everyone that's tuning in. We're just going to give you a moment just to kind of get in, get set, get some popcorn, and for the next hour, we're just going to talk about all things mental health, mental wealth. It's going to be informative. It's going to be light. There's a lot of heaviness around it right now, which we know is important, but I think we want to bring a little bit more of a perspective to it and a way forward from it, and not looking at necessarily what's wrong and what's missing, but what can we take forward going here. Well, who I have right now, and I'm just going to go from my screen from left to right, is we have Nadia. Hello, Nadia.
Hello.
Hello. We've got Haven from the Mindfulmenscub.
Hello.
We've got Jenel from Mental Wealth.
Hey.
We've got Sonam from Reroute.
Hello.
We've got Manoj from the Mindful Men's Club.
Hi, everyone.
And myself as well from the Mindful Men's Club as well. So guys, where should we start? Should we start with how this all got started? Who knows the timeline, right? Because we've been talking for such a long time. But how did this conversation come about today from where it started off initially?
Oh, crikey. I'm very happy to kind of start off on that front. Firstly, I think it was an excellent introduction though, so big up for that one. So yeah, this goes back to 2018, which kind of feels like a very long time ago, given that I know for a lot of people, myself included, 2020's felt like 5 years in one. But yeah, I had moved to London. I'm going to keep it very brief, obviously, because I want us to have a great conversation. But yeah, I'd moved to London and I was in a new job. I was in a new city. I was in a new home. And I've always been quite an anxious person. But I'd say that period of change really amped up, my anxiety. And I was looking for something to attend where there were people of the same community or background, so they could understand me and sort of all the things that I was going through, and kind of roughly a similar age. And I couldn't find anything in Harrow, which did sort of shock me, because I thought, like, there's Asian people everywhere I look. It's such a change from Bristol, which is where I'm originally from. And yeah, like, I couldn't find anything. And so eventually through that, I just decided that maybe if we can start something off, slowly it will gather legs, which I think this is the beautiful vision of what I had thought back then. So yeah, we just started very slowly with a meeting every month, which is obviously still the same format that we use, but it was about getting people together, having conversations about mental health, and just, allowing people space to articulate how they feel, that people don't have to suffer in silence. And then through that, I met Jinal. So I think this will be a nice little way for us to, after 6 odd months, we met. Thanks to her. So please.
Yeah, okay.
Before we do, I just want to say hello to a few people we have online. So we've got 8 people online with us now. We've got Yuvraj from Malaysia. We've got Rajesh, who's from India, but is in the US right now. And Mansato as well. Hello, guys. Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, please do comment. Hey, Krishna, how are you? Great to see you here as well. So please do comment with some questions and answers. We're just going to do a round of introduction in the panel before we get into the subject. So, Jenel, over to you with regards to mental wealth.
Yeah, so I think me and Sonam met. Did we meet in 2018, Sonam? I can't actually even remember. Yeah, so I think you had established Reroute for a few months, and it's quite interesting because just when you had started Reroute over the summer of 2018, I was actually looking to do something very similar, but I didn't really know where to even start. And exactly like what you just mentioned, Sonam, I was looking for other groups in Harrow just to kind of get an idea of what is already available and what I could provide. And exactly like what you said, there was nothing for a South Asian sort of community. And having worked in mental health, I've worked with a lot of like South Asian communities, and that's one of the things a lot of people really struggle with. It is that not just the education around mental health, but having a support space, because a lot of people find it really difficult to talk to people they already know about their own sort of issues, and sometimes it's easier to go to a space where you don't know anybody, because there isn't that sort of preconceived judgments or stories about you. And so when I came across Reroute, I was like, okay, let me attend. And I think I actually attended, I didn't attend as a member, did I? I came and did a workshop, I think, on anxiety, funnily enough. And then through that, I think we kind of got talking, and it made sense to me to not actually start something myself, because you were still quite new. And we kind of discussed, well, why don't we kind of team up together, allow Reroute to grow, and then see what happens from that. And interestingly enough, really kind of from the beginning, we were getting a lot of older women attending the group, even though your age kind of target was, I think, 18 to 35. So that's what kind of made me then decide, okay, clearly there needs to be a space for the older sort of generation. I'm in my late 30s. There isn't a support space for people of my age. And so after kind of like supporting with Reroute, I then set up Mental Wealth, and that's for sort of people over 35. And it's pretty much the same as Reroute. It's just really, you know, a monthly meeting. It's a safe space for people to come and sort of talk, share their sort of journeys, their experiences. And yeah, and then I think that's when me and you then got together and decided we need a men's group. And now we have a men's group. So yeah, one of the guys.
What happened there? Never mind.
I don't know.
It's the vibes, we're killing it. That's such a great story, and I just want to acknowledge a comment from Rajesh in the Facebook chat that mental health is such a relevant topic these days, and congratulations for taking this on. Thank you so much for that acknowledgement. And as you were saying, General, like the question was, okay, we need like a men's group, and that's kind of how Mindful Men's Club started off, where we all met at the Pret in Harrow, got on the coffee and had a conversation about what could be done, right? And I think the Mindful Men's Club journey has been quite interesting in that initially it did start off as in very similar vein as a sort of South Asian men's kind of group. And then when lockdown happened after our first meeting, we thought, let's take this digital and let's open it up to everyone. So Manoj, do you want to introduce how that all started, particularly how we got to the first live meetup to then how we've transitioned online?
Yeah, sure. So just to give, for those who just joined in late, so we just had a nice introduction from Sonal to basically introduce Reroute, and then Jenel, who's introduced Mental Wealth. So Riraj is going to put the links on the Facebook chat throughout the conversation. So please do support and check out the pages. And then I guess I connected from, I think, help me if I get the timelines and the facts wrong, Jenel, but I think you reached out to me on Facebook. I can't remember why, but something about something I wrote, and then we got connected. Then you invited me to a mental wealth meeting. I think I loved it from the first onset, but I did notice there wasn't any, I think there was one male there, if I remember. I think I came back for another 1 or 2 meetings, and I think at that point you invited me to do a talk about mental wealth, and I'm thinking, who am I to do a talk about mental wealth? And then just to sort of share my vulnerability, I actually had a mental health breakdown on the weekend. I shared that at the actual talk. So I remember doing lots of research and all this, and it went out the window because it was real as you can get. So I thought, okay, I've got to show up. So I did the talk, and I think we had a good heart-to-heart. And then through encouragement from yourself, you suggested that we set up a men's group, like Sonal. No idea how I was going to start, where it was going to go. It was purely organic. And then obviously myself and Havan got introduced, and then Viraj got introduced, and Sagar, etc. And oops, there's an echo. But okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so we got started, and we set Mindful Men's Club, and just as Viraj was saying, we started off on the premise that it was going to be filling a void for South Asian men in Harrow, but we quickly realized that actually mental health is much bigger than the space that we're locally residing in. I think COVID just basically happened to amplify that. So we pivoted like most communities and businesses did, and we adopted. So from our first physical workshop that myself and Haven delivered, to then going on Zoom every 2 weeks. That's basically where we are. So the space for Mindful Men's Club is for all men, from all faiths, religions, etc., all around the world. I think we've got some of them joining today. On Facebook, I can't see the Facebook, but Viraj is doing shout outs throughout, whoever's joining. So hi to everyone who's joined, etc., especially Mansata. So I think Mansata is basically, just want to mention her because she's actually building AI tech for mental health. So definitely go check out the work that she's doing. I got introduced through her from work. So yeah, so that's where the journey started.
Alan, how about yourself?
Yeah, mine's very similar to Manoj's, where we got introduced, and I had mental health issues myself, more to do with my career, and didn't really have an outlet to take it out. So I wanted to kind of set something up, and once me and Manoj got introduced, we kind of just took it forward quite well, and got to a point where every 2 weeks we get good double digits numbers of men turn up and talk about everything from literally like how to improve your finances to mental health to relationships, everything we've spoken about. Actually running out of topics now, aren't we?
I don't think we can ever run out of topics and some of the suggestions we've got. And just to echo what you guys have had, I think the commonality that we all have here is that we reached a certain point where what we knew sort of insightfully wasn't carrying the day, and we all had a particular challenge that we wanted to look at internally, and that's what prompted us to kind of do some of this inner work, but in a sense of how can we get to a place where we can actually serve more powerfully with what we can be responsible for, rather than kind of be at the effect of the stresses of day-to-day life as well. And I think, yeah, very simply, that's been my journey as well, from being in the corporate world for such a long time and just reaching a point of physical and mental burnout because you just work hard. That's what you're meant to do, particularly from people in our culture: head down, work hard and not complain. But actually being able to detach from the status quo, realizing that there is no status quo, then being able to sort of create and tap into the energy that we have within us to go out there and create what we want out there in the world. And now it's great that all 6 of us now are really kind of advocating that as well. So I do want to hand over to Nadia just for an introduction herself as well, but I want to read out a comment from Yuvrajan on the chat. Support circle of like-minded people is absolutely crucial for maintaining good mental health. I think we can all agree with that as well. And I'm blessed to be part of the Mindful Men's Club. Looking forward to the bi-weekly meetup. I mean, Yuvrajan, tuning in from Malaysia, is one of our regulars and is a massive contributor as well. So great to see you here, buddy. And Nadia, over to you. Just want to have you introduce yourself to everyone watching as well.
Hi, so I'm fairly new and I'm just joining part of Riru with Sonam, and I basically joined because of echoing what everyone else has said, that mental health isn't really spoken about much in the South Asian community. And as someone I come from a psychology background, first of all, but I've also had family with experiences of mental health issues, and I've seen it firsthand, the problem of not discussing well-being and just having an open discussion about really important issues like that and can really affect a person, and you can feel quite lonely. And especially because there's such an importance about community as being South Asian, it's a big thing that needs to be promoted. And also to be a youth representative, because I'm probably the youngest here, and I want to kind of bring that aspect to Riru and welcome more younger individuals into the group, because I think the big thing about it is because it's not spoken about, especially when you're young, it can be quite hard to reach out to like elder family members, and you're kind of shut in, and then it's difficult, especially if you just come to university and you're experiencing new things. And I know firsthand what that feels like. So yeah, so that's kind of what I want to bring to the table as part of this group.
Amazing, thank you, Nadia. And I think you're right, and I don't know about you, but I don't think you're the youngest person here anyway. I think there's a few younger than you right now. Age is just a number, right? But it's true though. I think it just shows that no matter what say spectrum of the age range that you're at, that just like in physical health, you are going to encounter some challenges which can press on your mindset and have you begin to feel in certain ways and begin to be and act in certain ways, which can then have a knock-on effect to the way you do things and the things that come to you as well. So I think it's safe to say that anyone, anywhere, any background, any culture, just as likely as you could incur some type of some injury innocuously, you can begin to not realize that you may be at the effect of something from the mindset perspective as well. And it's just, and I think the big thing that we're all here for is just to end that stigma and actually talk about challenges and where we get stopped and where we kind of internalize some of the external problems that we have and make it mean something about ourselves rather than just what are the tools and strategies to deal with that. So I do want to address a question actually that's in the chat right now from Rajesh. And this is one for mental wealth and Ruru and for yourself, Nadia, as well, is that women are naturally more expressive and mostly have a good support system built around it. That's amazing that you guys have a platform for men to open up to. My question is, how can you encourage to talk about it more openly and not have careers not affected by this?
Anyone want to go first on that?
I guess part of it is just about normalizing it. If you're joining communities like this where it's being constantly talked about, sharing resources, making it seem like just a perfectly normal thing to talk about, so that when you are asking someone, how are you, it's fine to say that you're not okay, and it shouldn't be seen as like, oh, that's too intense for me today, I can't talk about that. So I think when you're surrounding yourself with those kind of things, then that can help you to just feel more comfortable to talk about it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And at the risk of, obviously social media has got its amazing aspects, it's got obviously the not good aspects, but I would say that the kind of thing that we were trying to do in person and currently we're doing online, there is a whole host of resources available on social media, like online platforms of support. And if you can follow good content, if you can monitor the sort of stuff that you're consuming, I think that can also be really good and allow you to, open up and speak about mental health. If you're then sort of reading good stuff and you're sort of following good people that are doing some amazing stuff on the social media network. So that would be something that I think has definitely gained momentum over the last few years and really has helped with my mental health in particular.
Yeah, and I think
from the career angle. So I just wanted to add, I think from the career angle, I think it's important to talk about actually what support you can get. And when we say support, it's actually what can you leverage from the workplace, that if you are particularly stuck with a deadline because the workload is there, how can you begin to leverage that? Because I recall very vividly in a place where I used to work, there was a word that was used that if someone's disengaged, it means they're out the front door. Whereas actually you could be disengaged for a number of reasons. It could be workload, it could be actually not balancing, it could be a lack of sort of manager support and accountability. But what I noticed was that a lot of people just kind of took it on within themselves rather than saying, hey, you know what, rather than adding to my to-do list, let's take a few things off so I can effectively complete that. And I think that's the point where we can talk about how not have careers affected by it, is that actually if you're not saying no, you could be inviting more things onto yourself which you just may not be able to handle. So it's just being aware of what is the capacity that you have from that side of things, but then also being able to express that and say not now, maybe later.
Yeah, I agree. You have to know your boundaries. A good thing about being aware of your own well-being is knowing your boundaries, and you do have to sometimes know your limits and when to say no to things. And that will, of course, improve the efficiency of your work anyway. So I don't think that would be a negative thing in the workplace.
And it builds good relationships also. I mean, you only need whether it's in the workplace or I think in even personal life, you just need I feel like that one person that you can go to and share things with. And if you're lucky enough to have, a good manager relationship at work, I think that can be the difference between, 100% different. So yeah, it just takes that small bit of courage to kind of just open up a bit and kind of open that channel of communication. So yeah.
Just to add on that, I think part of, just to touch on Rajesh's comment about careers, and how do you do it where it's conducive to, I guess, not to detrimentally affect your career if you want to speak openly about it. So something we do in the corporate environment, we basically have in our daily team meetings, we literally talk about mental well-being as part of an actual slot at work. So for example, if you're in a position of empowerment, and by that I mean everybody is in a position of empowerment. Let's say if you're a leader, for example, or a manager, it's your duty actually to, you know, infuse that conversation during your work time and your career, because I think part of it is demystifying this thing about you can't speak about your feelings. And I think to Rajesh's point, yeah, women are generally more expressive, but I guess we would probably argue the other way, right, guys? In our group, we're completely open, but in general, I agree with you. Men don't really sort of open up, you know, about their feelings. It's really difficult to, but I think what's great about the space that all the men have created, and it's not us, it's the men who actually attend, just to make that clear, is that trust and integrity is a big thing. And I think when you take off your virtual mask, I say virtual mask, not your physical mask, your virtual mask in terms of your personality, who you really are, I think there's real strength in being vulnerable, but there's a time and a place and who you can be vulnerable with. And I think you have to choose and make that decision quite wisely. But I think once you do it, it's truly a liberating feeling once you share your story, however, whichever format you share your story in.
Absolutely agree. And I think the key thing here is recognizing that we're all responsible for our mental health and our mental health in the same way as we're responsible for our physical health as well. So just as though when we say we're tired or something is affecting us physically, we just push back. And I think the same thing as well as getting comfortable with the uncomfortable almost of actually saying, okay, yeah, do you know what? My mindset isn't right today. I'm tired, I'm stressed, I need some time out, whatever that may be. And actually communicating that rather than being at the effect of that as well. There's a great question here from Mansata in the chat. It's interesting how we have the same issues and stigma in the Black community as well. Do you think it's because we're not talking about it, or are there other underlying issues? Now, I think for me, straight off the bat, I think it's a bit of both. I think, especially with what we've seen this year with George Floyd, and I think there's a number of underlying historical issues that have kind of created a bit of a stigma and kind of warping the story. It's been very one-sided. So I think there's naturally that sort of historical context that a lot of people haven't unfortunately been educated in, or have, at least now we have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the history and what's been happening over the last 400 years. But I think it's the same thing, that I think it's a human thing that we're not talking about it because we've not maybe not understanding it clearly ourselves first to be able to communicate what it is that we're facing. And then I want to open up to everyone here, is that where can that self-awareness begin to start from, in terms of how do we begin to understand if we're facing a particular challenge, struggle, whether it's to dealing with kind of societal pressures right now, or at the home, or in our communities? What would be the first place to start?
I think it's an amazing question, isn't it? First of all, I think for me, it's basically having an awareness of your internal and external environment. So what I mean by my internal environment is my subconscious and conscious bias. So for example, who I've been brought up with, in terms of what country, the environment, the physicality, my parents, everyone. I think that obviously plays a massive part. And by the internal environment, I mean also your mindset. So are you actually truly aware of your own feelings? And because you can't help others unless you're actually truly aware of your own feelings first. And I think the external environment is helping break down those stigmas and barriers, right? So it's what we're doing here is nothing that other communities can't do. And I think that's the big message, actually, that we all want you guys to take away, irrespective of what community you are from, what age you're from, whether you're a male or female. There's really nothing special that all of us have done here. All we've done is we've got together online and offline, done a lot of work behind the scenes, obviously, to make it happen in terms of admin, but we have a common goal, and the common goal is not letting another person become a statistic to suicide. So, you know, the question that Mansata raised is that you can be that catalyst of change if you choose to, and it just takes you to have a conversation with one other person in your community then to have another conversation and put something online, and you will be absolutely shocked and surprised at how many people feel the same way you do. There just isn't a platform in your community, and that's why they're not coming forward. And you could probably surmise from that actually why people aren't talking about it is because there's not enough platforms out there for them to share their stories or to connect in whichever way in capacity you want to set that up. So I think, yeah, great, why not start a community if that is what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think just off the back of that, I'd like to add, where Mansata's speaking about underlying issues through a lot of the initial reroute and mental wealth meetings, for sure, it come up a lot about the sort of generation above us and their, the immigration struggles, kind of how much they were not allowed to speak about their feelings, the hardships, kind of how that's trickled through and created a brush it under the carpet sort of narrative, which I think probably does stand true for a lot of minority ethnic groups, because there's obviously survival was and is still so key, that a lot of these things were not given their due importance, and thankfully now that's changing. So yeah, amazing question. I think it really hits the nail on the head that there are several underlying issues, but nothing that can be nothing that can't be talked about. So I think what we're all trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to add to that, following the same point, is that it's also about you don't feel like you have anything to be worrying about, or that your mental health issue isn't valid because of the fact that the generation above you struggled so much. It's kind of pushed out the way to think, oh, well, I didn't have it as hard as my aunt or my uncle did, so I shouldn't really be talking about this or complaining about this. But it should be embraced that your feelings and your emotions are just as valid as whatever they went through. Just because it was a different situation doesn't mean that what you're feeling isn't real, and I think that needs to be brought more to our awareness.
I agree. I think the circumstances are all relative, and as you said, what the previous generation went through, we shouldn't vicariously suppress what we're going through either. And actually our challenges are very much more unique and distinct, so there really is no comparison. But I think the key is to realize that right here, right now, there's just something in our way, and what is that, and how can we begin to make those inroads? And yes, who are the people that you could talk to, rather than sometimes assuming that certain people are the ones that you will always go to because you have an affinity or a relatedness to, but actually they may not be the experts as well. So it's actually setting yourself up to identify how could this conversation begin to start, and who with, what community group as well. I think is also very key there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Next question here from you, Rajan. There's been a lot of stigma on open discussion of mental health in the community, but recently it started to open up slowly, and people started to get some courage to open up about their mental health. What can we do as a first step to overcome this stigma? So I think this is a great question to kind of follow up with the previous one. Who'd like to address that?
No one? Silence? This is not how we normally are in our groups. What's the question? Can you read out the question again, please, Viraj?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Yuvraj's question, there's been a lot of stigma on open discussion on mental health in the community, and it started to open up slowly, and some people have started to take the courage to open up about their mental health. What can we do as the first step to overcome this stigma?
I think the answer's in the question, right? So it's like when people have started to open up, I think you start with yourself, right? I think you start with your own, and opening up doesn't necessarily mean writing your story or like some of us have done, or sharing your video live on Facebook and etc. Because that's a big thing, right? That's a massive thing to do. Opening up can just mean acknowledgement. So first of all, do you actually have a challenge with mental health? And that's not a negative or positive, it's just an awareness. So just to make that really, really clear, it's not to prop you up or to bring you down, it's just having that awareness. So I think the first really step would be, I never acknowledged it, right? Because growing up, I was I was told to man up and all those phrases, and really toxic phrases, right? That men hear, because you're weak or you're too feminine, etc. So you kind of internalize that, and you sort of draw on that false sense of strength because of that machoism. So I think the first step is, whatever way you want to open up, I think do it in your own unique, authentic way. And that could just be as simply as journaling. It could be simply as acknowledgement to yourself. It could be simply as going for a walk because something's getting you, something's just getting too much, so you just need to take a breather. It could be meditation that some of us do here. So whatever that first step is, I think it starts with you first. And I think everyone in their circle of influence, by that I mean their real inner circle, has that real friend, that family, loved one that they can, or even a random stranger sometimes, right? In some of our cases, where you can actually really have that connection intellectually and emotionally. And when you share that with somebody else, what you'll find is a commonality, and that's what a lot of us have found. And then you think, oh, actually, why was I stressed about sharing it? Because he or she has the exact same thing that I was going through, if not maybe worse, actually, than I thought I had. And then it turns into 3 people conversation, and that's how groups are formed, right?
Yeah.
And that's how conversation starts. So I think, just as a suggestion, maybe that's the way. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah. I think also, to add to your point, is about creating a judgment-free space for yourself. And again, talking about yourself, is a lot of times what we do is when we have mental health issues, we judge ourselves. Like I think Nadia said that because our parents had it hard, we shouldn't be doing it. That's technically you're judging yourself. So it's essentially creating an open space where all your feelings are okay to be there. And then you kind of sort through your feelings. And then once you know how to do it, then you can spread that out to everyone around you, to your circle of influence.
Yeah, for me, I think, prior to starting Reroute, I knew very little about mental health in general, poor mental health illness, the gigantic umbrella that everything sits under. And a huge part of me becoming more confident in speaking about my own mental health has been just educating myself on mental health itself. Mental health first aid was this amazing course that I did through my employer, and I'm very pleased that they sort of put me on that. But there, again, online, there's a lot of things that you can read up on, some amazing blogs, and just kind of getting, making that language normalized, to kind of speak about your feelings, what's going through your head, making that a normal conversation, I think was the very first step for me to kind of pushing past stigma, because I wouldn't, you just, if you're not able to, and if you've never spoken about something before, it's very hard to articulate how you feel. Just as humans, I think that Britishness seeps in also, and then there's the cultural issues that we have. But yeah, you must just, work on educating yourself, and that would really help.
Yeah, I would agree.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Did someone want to say something?
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. No, so I kind of went through a similar experience quite a few years ago. I suffered from quite bad anxiety to the point where I had really bad panic attacks, and I couldn't actually go to work. And at the time, funnily enough, I've worked in mental health. I'm from a psychology background, but because it was happening to me personally, I didn't feel comfortable with it. I sort of had this mentality of it, mental health happens to everyone else. It's not going to happen to me because I'm okay. I've got everything sorted. And I honestly didn't know how to deal with it. And I didn't really kind of talk to my family about it because I wasn't sure, what the response was going to be like. And exactly like what Sonam said, the first step was actually, and kind of like what Manoj said as well, was about being okay with how I'm feeling right now. I'm this type of person that has to feel okay all the time, has to be happy. Everything has to be kind of, rainbows and flowers and whatever. But when I kind of went through this sort of bad experience, I was like, okay, I'm going through a bit of a bad time here. Let's kind of look into this and see what's kind of going on and just sit with these sort of feelings. And then the second step was the education. I didn't actually know a lot about anxiety. I knew about general anxiety, but there's lots of different types of anxiety. I didn't really understand what it was I was going through, why I was going through it. So I feel education is really, really important. And then kind of what everyone else here has said, support is massive. It doesn't matter who you go to talk to about it. I actually went to, who did I go to? It wasn't anybody I knew actually. It was like a therapist, And it was amazing, because I just felt, you know, I just felt a lot lighter, whereas before I was just dealing with a lot of things myself. So kind of like what everyone has said already, communicating is really, really important. And yeah, it's hard, don't get me wrong. The first step is always the hardest. But once you do make that first step, you will sort of see how much more easier it gets. And I think Manoju was saying, once you start having that one conversation with that one person, you actually start realizing, well, actually, I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only person who's going through this or has gone through this. We're all kind of very, very similar. It's just because we just don't talk about it. So I feel, yeah, talking about it is really, really key.
I think that's the key there. It's that we all kind of, again, assume that no one else is going through it, when a lot of more people than we realize are. And even by talking to someone, it may actually spark something off in them that they may realize. So it's that kind of chain reaction. So for me personally, about 3-4 years ago, I just kept getting like health issue after health issue, and I didn't know what was wrong. For me, I thought it was just stress, because of just long hours working. And it got to a point where I ended up having some neurological issues as well. And I'm like, this is just ridiculous, right? I don't know if anyone's had these electric shock tests, but I was strapped to this machine where they're testing the nerve endings in my finger, because my immune system thought my nervous system was a virus and started attacking that, which was weird. And I was like, how have I even got to this point, right? And I remember having a conversation with my doctor, and again, it was just one of like many recurring ones. And I was like, Doc, I don't think what's going on is physical. I think initially I just labeled it as stress. And he's like, okay, well, look, here's the local talking therapies place. Go check them out and see what it is. And I remember I did this questionnaire, and it said the results were, okay, so according to the questions and the answers, it said I had elements of depression, anxiety, PTSD, and OCD. And I was like, right, okay, now what do I do with that? But just that question then is like, okay, well, there's the CBT route, there's the counseling route. I went down that, but then I found that, okay, that was all surface level stuff. And I think this is the key here as well. And going back to the question that Yuvraj is asking and Mansata is asking in the chat, is that you begin to now piece together, okay, what is it that I need? And I think there's so many different routes you can go down. Like there's the therapy route where you've got, you know, healing something that's in your past that's playing up now. You've got coaching and mentoring, which is really about creating the future vision and how you can work towards that as well. You know, there's all sorts of different things out there. And I think the key is to really start the conversation of, okay, what is it that I'm actually dealing with and where is it coming from? Now, what support can I begin to leverage to kind of bring me back to a certain baseline? Or what is it that's going to pull me into the future that doesn't have me feel a certain way, that actually empowers and fuels me? So for me personally, it was going down the coaching route, because I saw that I didn't have any sort of traumatic experience so as such to heal, but I was very bogged down in circumstances and I needed something to pull me out. Whereas for others, it's a different journey. And there's a great question here from Mansata, which we've kind of answered along the way, but I think we can continue, is have any of us spoken openly in public about our struggles? If not, what's stopping us? And if yes, what's the process? So I think process-wise, it's beginning to understand, okay, what is it specifically? What is the specific challenge that I have right now? And how can I begin to get into action about it? And what are the various different services out there? And I feel that definitely talking and sharing in this forum in the 3 respective groups that we have is one way. But then also going back to you, Jenna, in terms of your point, like you realize that, you know, you're dealing with anxiety. How did you go about finding someone that was going to help support you with that?
So for me, I knew I was getting to a point where it was getting really bad, because it wasn't then just I was going through anxiety, it was affecting sort of my physical health. And as I mentioned, I wasn't able to go to work. I was really scared to go to work. I think there was one day where I did attempt to go to work, get on the train, I had a massive panic attack, and that I just had to come home. And I was like, okay, this is getting really, really bad. So firstly, it was that sort of self-awareness that, okay, this is getting bad. I need to do something with this or something about this. And I basically, again, it was like going on Google, trying to find out, okay, what are the different avenues of support I can go through? I looked on like the NHS website. I did actually know of someone who was an anxiety specialist. So I kind of got some support and advice. And that's kind of like where it started. And then also actually, I did then actually have very sort of open and honest conversations with my workplace. And they had no idea. And that was the other thing. Sometimes we're going through a lot, but we put on this mask, and people were really shocked I was going through this, to the point where they felt really bad because work was quite stressful at that time. I had a lot of sort of deadlines and a lot of projects going on. And again, just by having that simple conversation with my manager, my God, she was so supportive. It was amazing. Like I kind of wished, okay, why did I keep this to myself? I should have had this conversation much earlier. So I think that's the other thing. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You'd be really, really surprised how supportive people can be. And, you know, sort of the longer you kind of leave things to yourself, things faster even more. And then it becomes even more of a challenge to kind of get support and sort of reach out. So yeah, those were some of the things that I did.
It's also worth mentioning that that there's many doors that you can walk through, and the door that works for us may not be the door for you. So, for example, for me personally, I had a lot of pent-up anger, basically, for whatever reason, right? I mean, that's another story for another time. But I had really, really deep pent-up anger. I was a really sort of an angry guy all the way growing up, as far as I can remember, right? And what kind of, I guess, saved me, like literally, was going down the door of spirituality. So I got deeply spiritual, and that worked for me. And the sort of meditations that I practice every day are nothing sort of profound. It's just simple meditations that I've personalized through my own practice. So I do something called 7 Conversations with the Universe, right? I've not read that anywhere. I just made it up. I don't know where it came from. One's about family, one's about abundance, one's about spirituality, one's about love, one's about giving back to others, and one's about what's your legacy, etc., and so on and so on and so on. But you can create your own system, etc. So it's nothing complicated. It sounds complicated when you're going through something, because everyone's had that moment where you just want to sort of bury yourself under a pillow. I'm sure everyone's experienced that, right? Because you've suffered from deep anxiety and through deep depression. And in my case, you know, I've already shared it publicly. I nearly committed suicide 2 years ago. So I was at the really, really sort of dark place. And what literally saved me was having those conversations with people who have authentic energy around them, who generally care, who actually are there for you, and you sort of start to build up a support network. And I think as you do that, you start to realize that, you know what, you're not the only one. There's here's the reality check, guys, that in your friends and circle, in your family, I promise you, there's 10 people you know that are going through something, a severe battle, that you have no idea what they're going through. Now, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person for not recognizing it, or they're a bad person for not sharing it with you. It just means it exists a lot closer than home. You just don't know, because you haven't knocked hard enough on that door in terms of questions of saying, are you okay? Because the first question when people say, are you okay? Guess what? People just say, yeah, I'm fine. That's not your real answer. That's a superficial safeguarding answer that people put up as a protective mechanism. But if you actually have those conversations and you ask from different angles and different perspectives, and your choice of words is different than what you use, you start to find that people will open up. Literally, they will open up, because everyone goes through mental health, right? There's not a single person on a planet that does not go through a form of mental health, because if you really look up the definition, it's from mild anxiety to severe depression through suicidal, right? And it's like a massive spectrum, right, of definitions. There's like hundreds, if not thousands, in between. So I think it's not easy to share your story, but share it with yourself first. So even if it's journaling, even if it's saying it out loud, because as Jenna mentioned, if you internalize it so much that you don't share it, you're just going to amplify and amplify and amplify it, and that's what leads to suicide amongst men and women, right? It's just yeah, it's shocking and it's sad. So I think what we're just trying to share is that the more people share it across communities, across platforms, across age groups, just keep doing that, because yes, there will be some people who judge you, right? That's just a fact of life, right? And not everyone's going to love you for everything you do. But as long as you're authentic in what you do, and to yourself and to others, I think, and you share your real story, and you're not wearing this virtual mask, And every time someone asks you, are you okay? And you keep sort of saying, yep, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. In fact, quite often, guys, what do we say? Worry about the happy ones, right?
Yeah.
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 So you know those happy ones, like I was considered Mr. Super positive. I probably still am for everyone online, right? And in my nature, yes, I am, but I'm like you, right? I have down days and I have up days, but online everyone thinks, oh yeah, you know, he's putting all these positive quotes out and this and that. But that's my form of expressionism, guys. Choose your own form of expressionism. How do you want to express your feelings, and in a authentic way? And everyone can do that, whether that's through poetry, whether that's writing, whether that's art, whether that's dance, whether that's conversation, whether that's going to the gym, whatever it is. Find your tool set, and there's lots of things out there. So I think what we're trying to say is that there's many ways you can acknowledge and deal and process mental health, but you have to find something that works for you on a personal note.
Yeah, just to add to that really quickly, is just to understand that vulnerability is power. So to talk about whatever you're going through is definitely like a big power move, to be honest. If you feel like it's too scary or something that you feel will make you look weak, then that's definitely not true, because I think the biggest thing I respect people for is when they do tell me that they're just not okay, or that there's just something that isn't completely right in their life, and I'm like, I respect that completely.
It's like carrying an unnecessary weight. Like, what's the point? Like, you know, it's not a burden only on you. And the moment you just almost say it and let it go, it's no longer there, or at least part of that load is lightened as well. And I think that's the key, really, is that by carrying it and internalizing it, you're not really serving anyone, let alone yourself. So even if it means just sharing it, and as you say, vulnerability is power, that could actually enable someone else to open up as well. And it's that ripple effect that you can cause as well. And I think this leads on to the next great question, actually, from Mansata. She's asked some amazing questions today. Is we are now moving into the age of technology causing further disconnect. Have you found the move from in-person to Zoom, is there a disconnect, and what are your views? And I think this is such an interesting question, because we keep hearing social distancing, but actually it's physical distancing. The social element, you know, you can still pick up the phone, you can still FaceTime. Just because you may not be able to meet someone in person, that doesn't mean that you can't be connected to them. And I think for us, certainly, this has actually energized us, because we weren't able to meet in person, and we just took it to Zoom, and we're actually able to reach more people as well. So, and again, I feel it's just the context in which you're looking at that. Is it's not that the technology is bad, it's how do you use it, how do you embrace it? Like with anything, you know, the knife in the hands of a thief is dangerous, the knife in the hands of a surgeon is a godsend. So it's looking at it and saying, okay, how can this technology be used for us rather than it be a disconnect? What are your guys' views on that?
I mean, whilst I completely agree with you, at least it's enabled us to continue our meetings when a lot of people's work, unfortunately, has come to a stop. We're still able to put our stuff out there and kind of continue. Personally, I think we have, I wouldn't say struggled. I think it's been a bit of a learning curve in how energy is just different online, or it might be a perception, you know, you can't bounce off of someone's energy through Zoom. We're finding it a little bit tough in that aspect. You know, the discussion, it doesn't work so well. Obviously, our meetings are predominantly female heavy, and we've never had a problem before, you know, kind of, we'd always be running out of time, very similarly to yourselves, but perhaps because our meetings were always in person and then suddenly there was a shift, you know, maybe that's what it is. But yeah, it has been, you know, it has affected, I would say, the way we've had to facilitate them, for sure, being online.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a change. It's an adjustment, isn't it? Because whilst it's quite scary to come to a space like ours, especially if you're sort of new and it's your first time and you're coming to a group of people that you don't know, there's something quite comforting about being in the presence of people. And online, it's a bit of an adjustment, and not a lot of people feel comfortable you know, sort of speaking online. That, I mean, I feel uncomfortable just seeing my face online. It's quite awkward. And even for me, like, I know, so Sonam, you were saying, yeah, we're really lucky we've got technology, so we can still continue with things, but there's just something different about face-to-face, in-person connection. It's just really, really different. And I personally miss that.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, there has been some
Go ahead, because I think we've had a different experience by going online, haven't we?
Yeah, I was going to say there have been some positives for us, as our attendance has doubled basically from face-to-face to online, as people can just attend from their house, basically from the sofas. And we've got so many men like actually appreciating the space that we've created. And that space would have been created face-to-face or online. So the integrity of the conversations and just keeping everything within the group, it's still there. So for us, it actually worked a lot better when we moved on to Zoom, and we're doing it a lot more frequently as well. So yeah, for us, it's kind of worked a lot better. Maybe it's a male thing.
just to
I was going to say that.
no, but just to touch onto that, and I guess just to share a bit of an insight, it wasn't always like that. So what I mean by that is, what we found is it was an evolution, it was a journey. So we found a lot of men putting the videos off initially, and then using the chat function, for example, in Zoom to chat, and then eventually they'll sort of transcend from chat to then video on, and then video on to then not listening, in terms of listening, just listening, but then actually then taking part. So I guess, and that's fine, right? And that just shows that it takes a while to adjust, right? And even amongst the men, but we're at a stage right now where we probably know more about each other than our partners. I think, right? Safe to say. I'm saying that with a slight caveat because Havan and Son are my partners. Yeah, but
they're in different rooms. It's okay.
They're in different rooms. Yeah. But it takes time. It takes time. But I think, look, we're social animals. We all crave human interaction. I certainly thrive on a physical energy, etc. But we've not let that stop us. I think we've just had to adjust, right? I think we know that we can't, and I think back to Viraj's point, it's not social distancing. I think government's kind of got it all wrong. It's physical distancing, right? There's a different terminology. Social distancing is completely different conversation. Yes, you have to physically distance, but it doesn't mean you can't pick up the phone, doesn't mean you can't WhatsApp text, it doesn't mean you can't go on Zoom, and it doesn't mean you can't check in on your friends and family. So it just, and back to Mansata's point, there's a balance of technology, right? So it can become too evasive, and I know Facebook and Instagram can become really, really dangerous, and you know, there's a lot of people trolling out there, and a lot of celebrities have talked about it, haven't they? And it happens to just normal people like us, right? And at the same time, you can get consumed in that noise, and actually it can amplify your mental health, or it can give you a respite, albeit it might be a temporary respite. So it just depends how you use it. But I think balance of technology is quite key. I personally have been pretty hardcore on Facebook. I've come off it for the last 2 weeks. You probably hardly see anything from me, and people are saying to me, Manoj, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm just having a time out. It doesn't mean if I don't post every day, I'm not okay, but it's setting the expectation, right?
People are checking in, are you okay? Because they've used to that, right? So it's great.
No, but you know what? It's a genuine feeling that they're saying, are you okay? And I appreciate it, but it just makes me smile, because is okay defined by what I post online? But that is okay. That's just how I've perceived it and how it's been received, right? It's just an interesting conversation that people normalize what they see, and if they don't see a regular pattern, they automatically assume that something's really, really, really wrong. But I am quite humbled and by the fact that people are checking in on me. I don't feel pressure that I have to then post again. I just say, I'm just having a time out. I'm just chilling, basically. I'm writing, but I'm just not publicizing the writing. You know, I'm sharing in my own personal journal. So I think there's a balance. I think there's not one way or the other in terms of when it comes to technology.
Definitely. Speaking of technology, I think this is just a testament to the reach that we've got today. There's a few comments I want to read out. Firstly, from Fatima in Australia. I love this program, you guys. I'm in Australia and I must go to bed now, but I want to say thanks and ask you to continue these discussions. Thank you so much, Fatima. Thank you for tuning in, and we definitely will. Comment here from Deepak that the good thing about the Mindful Men's Club is that it came during a lockdown time when more people were spending self-time reflecting. Zoom was a great way to channel thoughts and expression. And from Dharmesh, a key difference may be that when the men started their group shortly before lockdown, there was only 2 physical meetings, whereas women were established and therefore had a more significant difference in interaction. So I think those are all definitely key factors there as well. I'm just mindful of time, like the hours just flown. So I do want to take in another question before we share our key takeaways for everyone here, which is from Yuvraj. And I think this is one that we can all relate to as well, is that how do you give advice to a person that's not willing to listen to your advice, especially if the person is close to you? And I think the first thing here is that you can give the advice, but you've got to respect their choice, whether they take it or not. And if it's your attachment, then that's more of a self-management piece as well. And also considering, are you the right person to be giving that advice in terms of like the authority and all that stuff as well? So I think that's a little bit more complex, but I think that's the key, is actually asking ourselves, how often do we take advice other people give to us as well? So it's that two-way thing. But I get it. You know, when you're committed to someone and you want what's best for them, you do want to give them some advice and insights. But I think the key is to respect their choice, whether they take it or at least feel empowered in their decision to take it or not.
And also, has that person asked you for their advice? So I know, you know, if I'm sort of having a conversation with someone, it's just, I don't know, I'm letting off steam or something, and someone comes into the conversation, okay, well, I think this is what you need to do. Immediately, I kind of go to a space, well, okay, I haven't actually asked you what you think I need to do. So that's also something else you need to look at. You need to kind of listen to what that person is saying and kind of take the lead from them. If they haven't actually, you know, asked you for their advice, it's not your space to give advice. That's what I would say as well.
Yeah, everyone's ready in their own time to maybe take action or try and find a solution. So sometimes when someone's like voicing their concerns, it's more about just needing an ear there to listen to them rather than someone giving them a solution and what to do. So yeah, so when they're ready, they may take that advice, or maybe it is a chance for them to grow. And if they're not listening to that advice, you have to kind of let them do whatever it is they're going to do, and it'll just happen in their own ways.
I'd actually agree with that. I think Nadia raised an interesting point. See, you can't give advice unless you have trust. You can't have trust unless you start listening. So the best thing you could probably do is be there for that person. And whether it's them ranting, whether it's them sharing, whatever it is, just be that sounding board. And if it opens up into a natural conversation, it's not quote unquote advice, it's a conversation. And how they receive that conversation and choose to do something about it, then it becomes advice, right? But that's their choice, not your choice. I would just, yeah. So I'd echo everyone's thoughts on that.
Yep, I think so. And commenting from Deepak, how many times has someone given you advice, but you don't respond to it sometime later? Advice does not have to have a timeline, which I think is a really, really great point there as well. So guys, we are on the hour. What do we want to leave people with? And what do we want to acknowledge what we've caused collectively in the 3 different groups that we're operating as well? I think this is the time to do that.
We're respecting time because we could just talk for hours like we normally do. So
well, to kick off, I think for me is the fact that, you know, the consistent conversations and consistently speaking about your mental health will lead to a point where, I think going back to some of the comments, you know, one day you will feel comfortable speaking publicly about it and maybe challenging behaviors around you. So yeah, just, you know, kind of that consistent effort, and slowly but surely, you know, we will break through the stigma, and ultimately, you know, things will be slightly changed, not just in our community, I think kind of wider in terms of mental health awareness. So yeah, just keep on at it, basically. So we go round, is it?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, let's go around. So Hoven, over to you, seeing as you're in the same geography, just going upstairs.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about awareness, just knowing what you are going through, what other people are going through, and knowing the support that you have. One great support that I use, I'll just drop it in there, is YouTube. I've basically solved all my life issues on YouTube. There are so many videos that tell you how to solve your mental health, and I'm just forever grateful. So it's all about having awareness of what's happening to you and having awareness of what there is there to help you get out of it. And once you're aware of it, you will just start moving towards what you really want, is to be happy.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. And Nadia, over to you.
I think I just will re-emphasize that vulnerability is power, and if this is the first time that you're even thinking about your own mental health, the first step is probably just accepting your own vulnerabilities and that it's okay not to be okay, and just tell shame to go away, because shame is the enemy and it's just a socialized thing that we've programmed ourselves. So just don't judge yourself, go easy on yourself, and embrace your vulnerability.
Manoj.
Yeah, I'd actually have to echo pretty much what Nadia said, which is, and it's from a personal note as well. I think your real vulnerability, so obviously your real strength, comes from actually sharing your vulnerability in whatever way you want to share that. So like I mentioned before, whether it's sharing your story with a random stranger, or sharing your story with a friend or a loved one, etc., I think it's just a liberating feeling. I can't even put it into words. So once you share your story, that's when your real power comes in, and then that leads to real inner joy, because happiness, as we've discussed, is an external state. So if you're after real inner joy, that's what it leads to. And I think for anyone who's listening out here who is going through a tough time, and we've all been there, just like literally hang in there, because every single person you see here has gone through a tough time in any way, shape or form. And that's what we're all doing, is because we want to be catalysts of change and empowerment to you guys, because life is just too precious to just do something stupid as commit suicide, right? Crazy that you should get to that stage. But yeah, that's all I want to share.
Thanks, Manoj. And Gino.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I wouldn't have been able to get out of my situation if it hadn't have been me reaching out for help. And that was a tough thing for me. I'm very Asian like that. Don't like asking for help. You have to figure out things for yourself. And no, why do you have to figure out things for yourself? There's absolutely nothing wrong in reaching out. As we've said before, there's a lot of people who'll be going through the same thing as you. Might not be the same situation, something completely different, but it just opens up something, and it's just such a relief. It's a massive relief. And we've seen that in our groups with Reroute, with mental wealth, people who've come for the first time. Yeah, it's scary, it's really nerve-wracking, you don't know what to expect, and then they kind of see, oh, okay, so I'm not the only person going through all this stuff. And people have built some really nice friendships and a real nice sort of support network. So support is, for me personally, really key.
Amazing. I just want to share a few comments on the chat as well. We've had Estelle joining in saying it's her first time here, really insightful. Thank you a lot for all you do. Yuvrajan saying thank you for everyone. This session was fun. So I think we've got to do this again sometime for sure. Krishna, thank you so much for today's session. Learned so much from you all today. Thank you from Mansata as well. And for me, I think my key takeaway is echoing a lot of what you've all shared as well. I think for me, the single biggest thing that we can do is knowledge is power, but knowledge, if it's not applied, is a bank account that's never spent. So the key thing is action. Like, just get out there, try one thing, speak to one person. You don't have to know the exact answer straight away when in any journey, really, but it's about almost a game of guess who, really. Figure out what's not there and what is there. The closer that you can get to the specifics, I think that way is where you can definitely begin to connect to the people, the resources, and take those actions as well. And anything external isn't really yours, and as Manoj was sharing as well, with something we say, that joy is this internal state that we cultivate. And when you look at your circle of influence, it's recognizing that you have a lot more power and say over everything that's going on around you, and it's beginning to learn how we can flex that muscle, and know that actually the source of our own happiness and joy is within, and what can we now begin to take away that's not serving us. And it's a journey, so it's not going to be one conversation and it's a fix, but it's allowing yourself to be able to just try different things and letting it flow as well. So on that note, I really want to take a moment to acknowledge Reroute Mental Health, because if it wasn't for you guys reaching out to us, there wouldn't have been a Mindful Men's Club. And similarly, you know, I think the conversations that we've all had over the last almost a year, right, when we met up in Harrow and had that conversation over coffee and croissants, we're like, what are we going to do with this? And you guys have laid the groundwork and doing some incredible, amazing things. So I want to acknowledge you guys for what you're doing, and having Manoj and obviously Saga and Tilak on live with us as well. Like, it's been an absolute blast in the Mindful Men's Club. I can't believe it's been well over 10 meetings now, and we've covered everything from global politics to masculinity to a whole heap of stuff, and some pretty cool stuff as well. So I just want to, and Nadia as well, like, I just want to say, guys, like, thank you for being a champion of yourselves, and in doing that, you're really championing people's lives out there. That there are people online that you've probably never met, probably haven't heard of, but you've made an impact on them. So I want to acknowledge each and every one of you guys for being who you are.
Yeah, thank you, Viraj, and you.
Thank you. Thanks, Viraj. Thanks, Viraj. I think it's also important to just to share that if you guys want to reach out to Reroute, we will put all the actual links in the chats on the stream. And if you want to reach out to Mental Wealth and also Mindful Men's Club, so there's 3 different communities, etc. So you've got Reroute, I think, is it from 18 to 35? Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, Nadia. Okay, so the younger audience, and then Mental Wealth, which is for the women, right? Channel, yeah, and so for the women only. And then obviously you've got the Mindful Men's Club, which is for all men, all face, all around the world. So if you do want to talk to us on a serious note, we are generally here. We're just not here for this. We have lots of different conversations offline and online. So please ping us in our respective groups and do reach out. And if you want us to talk about any more topics, because it's not our space, it's your space, please comment on this and we'll share it on a replay. Just put #replay so we know, so we can watch it back, and we will filter through all the actual questions and answer every question, because we always do that. And also listen to the suggestions that you guys have, because we wouldn't be here without you guys. So it's not our space, it's your space. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing. And everyone watching, please do share it on your profiles or platforms, privately, online, offline, with people that you feel could just benefit from just listening to this conversation alone, or if they wanted to reach out to each one of our respective groups. But on that, guys, it's been an absolute blast, and yeah, looking forward to doing this again sometime soon.
Definitely. Have a blessed weekend all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.